Welcome to the Gamescape, everybody. My name is Jeric, and today we're in Phoenix Point, and we're going to take an in-depth look at the Aspida ground support vehicle from the Synedrion faction. In my 10 tricks and tips video, I took a little bit of a look at the Scarab and the Armadillo, which are the other two fighting vehicles from the Phoenix faction and from the new Jericho faction. I only mentioned the Aspida in passing in that video, and I wanted to circle back around and do this video because the Aspida is really kind of a neat vehicle, and it's not a combat vehicle. It really is more of a support vehicle. It has no ranged attacks. It's got less armor, less hit points than the other two vehicles, and it is a little bit more expensive, but it does a couple of things that are pretty neat and a couple of things that you might need and you might find really useful. So let's start with the basics. The capacity, which is the number of soldiers this can carry, is only one. The other two vehicles are 4 each. So this thing can't move your troops around nearly as well as the other two can. But it's fast, right? It's a speed 32. Nothing else in this game really goes that fast. There might be a couple of Pandorans that can get 32, but for the most part, 32 is about the fastest thing out there. Now, this does help somewhat mitigate the fact that it has no ranged attacks because it can move 16 squares and still use its melee attack on an enemy unit. So not having the ranged attack is not ideal, but it is made up for a little bit by this extra speed. At 700 hit points, it is the weakest of the 3 combat vehicles. The Scarab has 900, the Armadillo has 1250. And the armor is listed here on this screen as 20, but that's actually not exactly correct because it does have more armor than that on some of its positions. And we'll take a look at the individual positions and their armor and stuff here in just a couple minutes when we get into an actual scenario where we can see this thing in action. So what does it take to build one of these things? Well, the first thing you need is you need to have the Synedrion Aspida development technology researched. And you can get that in a couple of ways. The first way is through diplomacy with Synedrion. If you're in good enough standings with them and you help them out, they will start sharing their tech with you. And at that point, you'll be able to reach it. The other way to get it is to steal it from the Synedrion. Now, which way is better for you is going to depend on your game and how you feel about the Synedrion, what their attitude toward you is, etc. Either way will work, though. And there is another way that you can get one, maybe, in that there are some missions out there on the Geoscape where you can do an exploration site, and it will lead to finding sites where vehicles are on the map. And if you can find one of those, you go to that mission, you start it up, you bring your soldiers in, and all you have to do is go find the vehicle, get in it, and drive away. And it's free. So the problem with that is you don't know which vehicle you're going to get until you actually find it on the map. And it is random, I think. So you might get one of these, you might get a Scarab, you might get an Armadillo. It's just hard to say. But those missions are out there, and it is a way to get a free vehicle if you can find one. So that's maybe something to keep an eye out for as you're cruising around the Geoscape with your Manticore and your team. Once you have that researched, to build one of these things, it is 135 tech and 630 materials, which does make it the most expensive of the 3 vehicles. But even then, you're still not going to outfit 2 soldiers for the cost of one of these vehicles. So it's really not that bad. It's going to cost you a bit, and it might take you a little bit to save up the materials for that. But it's really not that expensive compared to outfitting soldiers. The base time to build this is actually 6 days, 9 hours. In this particular game that we're looking at here, I've got several manufacturing facilities, and so this time is way down. But the base, if you only have one fabrication plant, is 6 days, 9 hours. So it's a bit of a build. But this isn't a vehicle you're necessarily going to want immediately anyway. Your first vehicle is actually probably going to be a Scarab. Maybe not, but I would maybe not recommend the Aspida as your first vehicle. You're probably going to want an actual combat vehicle first. And for running combat and helping your soldiers out in that respect, the Scarab and the Armadillo are both much better than this thing is. So what is this thing good at? A couple of things. First of all, it is one of the only ways in the game where you can bring a soldier back to full health from them having disabled body parts. The other thing that this Aspida is really good at is delivering massive amounts of paralyzation damage. And you are going to run into missions in the game where you need to capture Pandorans alive. And even besides that, there are reasons to do it. First of all, capturing Pandorans for live research helps you in different ways. You can also turn them into mutagens for doing your mutations if you follow that path with the Disciples of Anu. There's even one where you can turn them into food if you want, which is kind of questionable, but you know, don't knock it till you try it, I guess. I don't know. At any rate, there are times where you're going to want to or even need to capture Pandorans alive, and this vehicle excels at that. It does massive paralyzation damage very quickly, which is kind of lacking in your soldiers' weapons and weapon choices for doing paralyzation, at least up until later in the game. So having the ability to deliver big paralyzation damage in a hurry is going to make those capture missions much easier and much safer for your troops. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at one of these things in action. If you guys will give me just a moment, I'm going to set up a scenario on an actual battlefield, and we're going to see how this thing helps your soldiers out, how it interacts with the enemy, and kind of get an idea of, you know, the different parts of it and how they're armored and whatnot. So give me just a moment, let me get that set up, and I will bring you right back. So we're in an actual mission situation here. We're going to take a little bit closer look at the Aspida here, and then we're going to go ahead and see it in action. But starting out, let's take a look at the info for this thing, because this is going to give us a little bit better picture of what this vehicle really looks like. We've already seen 700 hit points. We've already seen 32 movement. But those hit points have different hit locations, as all vehicles do. So the shielding is actually the side of the vehicle, not the front. And that is 50 armor and 320 hit points. That's the thickest armor on the vehicle. It has 3 thrusters. Each one of them has 220 hit points and 20 armor. Each one of these that gets disabled is going to have a -10 movement penalty to the vehicle, which for a vehicle who counts on its speed for so much of its utility, that's not great. Unfortunately, these things are big, they stick out, they're pretty easy to hit, and they're pretty lightly armored, so there isn't a lot you can do to protect them. You can get the vehicle behind a little bit of cover, and maybe they'll be protected that way, but even then, the rear one is up high in the back, so it can be exposed from the side. There's not a ton you can do about that. But just be aware that the thrusters are exposed, and if you can get your vehicle behind a little bit of cover, that's not going to hurt you. The hull is the front and the top armor part. It is not the thickest part. That's something to keep in mind. Your thickest armor is on your side, not on your top, or on your front. So that's 380 hit points and 30 armor, and then it has 2 tech arms, each one of which has 200 hit points and 20 armor. Like all vehicles, it's a machine entity, and it has no willpower. It's immune to biological effects. It's immune to fire, it's immune to virus, immune to poison, daze, and psychic attacks. It just ignores all of those things. You can drive right through fire, right through a poison cloud. It doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt the vehicle, and it's not going to hurt anybody that's in the vehicle, just like the others. The tech arms are the weapons. They're melee weapons, so they only have a range of 1. They do 10 points of damage, but they have 50 piercing, which means that they ignore 50 points of armor, and they'll do that 10 points of damage through the armor. The reason why you want to do the damage is so you can deliver the paralysis. And these things have a 20 paralysis, and there's 2 arms attacking. So when these things hit, you're doing 40 paralysis damage to whatever you're hitting. That's enough to take most Pandorans out of the fight for a good long time. Your Arthrons and your Tritons and your just kind of run-of-the-mill Pandorans, they tend to have between a total of 10 to 30-ish paralysis points that they can take before they're completely disabled or completely paralyzed. So you're going to do 40. The countdown on that is 1 per turn. So even if it has 30 that it can take before it's disabled, you're going to do 40. That thing's out for the count for 10 turns, and even then it's not going to be able to move and act very much, because when your paralysis is near the top, it still subtracts from your ability points. So that Pandoran's basically out of the fight, probably for the duration of the mission. It costs 2 action points for the attack to be made, and its effective range is 1. It is basically a melee attack, so it doesn't miss. Its ammo capacity here is listed as 12 with a burst of 2. That's a little bit deceptive, because while this thing uses both arms for its attack, which is its burst of 2, it still only uses 1 ammo or 1 charge to make that attack. The other ability that the Aspida has that also is based on its arms, even though they're not listed there, is this ability Full Restore, which is fully heal and repair a target and remove 50% paralysis. Fully heal isn't exactly right. It actually does plus 200 health, which may not completely heal some of your soldiers if they've got really high strengths. And then repair target, what does this mean? If you have a soldier that has disabled body parts, normally those body parts are disabled for the entire mission and do not become re-enabled until after the mission. The Aspida and this Full Restore ability has the ability to take those disabled body parts and put them back into fully functional status. So if you have a disabled arm and you can't fire your assault rifle, for instance, the Aspida can repair that arm to where it's fully functional again, and you'll be able to use your assault rifle again after the heal. Removing 50% paralysis is okay. It might not be quite enough, because like I said before, having any paralysis damage is going to reduce your action points, even if you're not completely paralyzed. So being able to remove half of them is pretty good. It isn't necessarily going to get you back into full fighting trim, but it's better than not being able to do anything. All right, so between the attacks and the Full Restore ability, you have a total of 12 uses. Each one of those takes up one of those charges on your arms. So that's something else to remember. You're not, it's not a forever thing. You do have limited use of both of those, and you can mix and match those however you want. You could do 12 Full Restores, you could do 12 attacks, you could do 6 of each, whatever you want. Okay, so let's take a look at the armor positions on this thing and what they actually look like. We're going to select our sniper here. I'm going to go into full aim mode and back out just a little bit here so we can take a look at our vehicle here. So as you can see, the hull of it is this front plating, and the top here as well. That is, again, not your thickest armor. So if you're looking to get this thing protected, or you're looking to turn your heaviest armor towards the enemy, that's actually going to be these side pieces right here, which is called the shielding. And why it's designed that way, I don't really know, but that's how they built it, and so that's all right. These two little white things sticking out here on either side are your tech arms. Now, when these things are in use, they kind of spool out on giant robotic tentacles, and they'll go attack the target or heal the target or whatever you use them for. But while they're not being used, they're stowed inside. It makes them pretty small targets. They can be hit, but they're pretty little. These thrusters, on the other hand, are not. They're big. They stick way out. Like I was saying before, they have only 20 armor points and only 220 hit points. So they're really exposed. And again, if you can get this vehicle into about half cover, that'll help. But even then, the back one, which you can't really see from this angle, is up high. So this vehicle, you do want to have cover if you can get it, and maybe not take the hits on these thrusters if you can help it. So let me turn the vehicle sideways and get a little better look at the side here. Okay, let's go back to our sniper. Here we go. Here's the side of it. Again, there's the thruster on the side. There is the shielding on the entire side of the vehicle is the shielding, right? And then here's that third thruster up in the back. It's pretty exposed from the side and the back. Even if you had cover, this thing's sticking way up there. I don't know if they'd specifically target it necessarily, but it is there to be hit. So even with cover, you're not completely safe. One of the things to notice too is that the back end of this thing is really wide open. There's a lot of space here, and you can see I've put a soldier on the other side here, and it is not giving him any cover at all. Even though the vehicle's between us and him, his torso's exposed, both of his legs are exposed. If we were really lucky, we might get his arm. But something to keep in mind with this Aspida is it isn't the best at blocking line of sight to your troops. Now, if this were a Scarab or if this were an Armadillo, those things are giant bricks and they fill in this whole space, and this soldier would be 100% completely line of sight blocked. We wouldn't be able to see him at all, and he would be protected behind the heavy armor of that vehicle. That is not the case with this vehicle, and this vehicle is not very good at protecting your soldiers that way, right? I mean, like you can see here, it's wide open, and with my sniper, let's say my sniper is a Pandoran and this is one of our troops, well, I can take out his leg underneath the vehicle. It's not a problem to do it, and there's no cover there at all. If you're going to use your vehicle for that, the soldier needs to be right adjacent to it, and he needs to be on the front third of the vehicle. Right, so the vehicle is 3 tiles by 3 tiles. He needs to be here, and even then he's really out far in front, and it wouldn't take much to step to this side. In fact, this guy over here would probably have perfect line of sight to him even if he was standing right here. Now you might be thinking, well, maybe we turn the front of the vehicle toward him. Well, we can try that. We can
reporting enemy contact.
We can take the vehicle, we can kind of come up next to him here. The problem is, to turn the vehicle you have to move a square, and so to turn the vehicle so the front is facing the enemy, you're moving a square away from your soldier, which again makes it so maybe he's not he's still kind of exposed even from this side, you know. Okay, so we can't see him from here, but if I take about 2 steps this way,
ready to rock.
Do not again. Take a look around. Where did he go? There he is. Look at that. We can see him almost perfectly. So this vehicle just isn't good for this kind of stuff. The side of this vehicle is so sloped that it just doesn't provide the visual, you know, the line of sight blockage that that one of the other combat vehicles does. That's more bricky. If we look at the side, I can show you a little better here. You see how sloped this side is here? It's just the Scarab and the Armadillo come up and over, and it's just a big brick. And this thing just isn't that way. There's a lot of open space all around this thing, so it's not good at blocking line of sight. Fortunately, there is a better way to help your soldier out, which I'm going to show you here in just a minute. But for right now, we have a wounded soldier. So let's turn our guy back around here and get adjacent to him. And then we can use, we've got 3 action points still, so we can use our full restore capability. Now, if we look at our soldier, we can see he's got the red leg icon there, which means it's disabled, he's bleeding, and he's at about half health. So if we go ahead and use our restore ability here, healed 200 hit points, it re-enabled his leg, and if we look at our ammo, it did use one of our 12 charges here, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. It doesn't say anything here about it, but it does use charges, and it also uses the action points. So, I'm going to reset real quick, and I'm going to show you a better way to help your soldier out than trying to block line of sight with your vehicle. I'll be right back. If we take a look at our soldier here, you'll notice the embarkation point of the vehicle is in the front, rather than in the back like it is on the Scarab and the Armadillo. Why does that matter? Because you cannot drive an Armadillo or a Scarab up to a soldier and just pick them up, because they have to turn around, and in order to turn around they have to move a square. So soldier rescue is another one of the really nice things that the Aspida is good at, and kind of just to demo that, we've got some Pandorans over here. Again, this is a little trivial because we already know where they're at, but let's say we didn't, right? And so we're kind of coming up here and we get a little bit too far.
Advancing.
So we'll run up here oh
On
no,
my
we just
way.
found a whole bunch of these Pandorans and we're out of action points, right? So this guy's going to come and eat our lunch if we don't do something about it. Maybe this guy back here, you know, has a gun instead of a pincer. Actually, this guy does have a gun, so he's going to come around. He's going to take some shots at our guy. We don't have any cover. He's just in bad shape, right? So what we can do is we can actually get the Aspida up here and we can just pick this guy up, even though he's out of action points. Now, what you want to do that, though, is you don't want to drive right up next to him. You want to move one square away from him. So if we were to go here, we would be adjacent to him. We want to go here instead. And the reason for that, again, is to turn the vehicle. It costs one, and you have to move one square to turn the vehicle. And we need to turn the vehicle so that the embark point is on right on top of our soldier. He can't move, so we have to move in such a way that we can pick him up when we're done moving. So if we just do that, now if we go back to our soldier, even though he's completely out of action points, he can still get in the vehicle. There he goes. He's in. He's safe, and we can drive away. Now we know where the Pandorans are, and they're not going to touch us. Everything's going to be fine. So soldier rescue is another one of the really good things that this vehicle is great at. You do have to be mindful. Its carry capacity is only one soldier, so you can't rescue multiple soldiers in this manner. But if you get one guy that's kind of stuck hanging out in a bad spot, maybe you were careless, or maybe you just kind of ran into some unexpected trouble right at the end of its movement, this is a great way to get that soldier out of trouble. And even if you can't pull all the way back this far, the vehicle is going to be able to absorb a lot more damage from these guys than the soldier can. Again, good tactic to use if your guy's in trouble. And we're going to go ahead and reset again, and I'm going to kind of show you this thing's combat capabilities. Okay, so for our third demo here, we're going to go ahead and see the combat capability of this thing, like I was saying. And so I've started up a little bit of a scenario here, and I let it run for a turn. So our guys are all here in cover, and our Pandorans are closing in on us here. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to have our Aspida just kind of snuggle up next to this Pandoran here a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and see these arms in action. So what we're going to do, we're adjacent to him now. This is a melee attack. So we're going to go ahead and activate the electric strike. It's 2 action points to do that. Here come the arms. And zap. All right, so again, you can see it used one of our charges of our 12. And our Pandoran here now has 40 out of 10 paralysis damage. So this guy is down for the count, and I mean, he is out of it. This paralysis damage is going to decrease by 1 per turn. So 30 turns from now, he'll be down to 10 out of 10. The turn after that, he'll be 9 out of 10, which means he'll technically be conscious, but even then he's not going to be able to do anything because he's not going to have any action points. So up until he reaches the 10, he's losing action points for all the different paralysis that he's taking. So even at 9 or 8, he's only going to have 1 action point to spend. So this guy, he's just out. He's not going to be in any kind of shape to do anything. So the one of the things you do want to be careful of, however, is he is still a valid target. And so if your intent is to take him alive, which it probably is if you're using the Aspida to hunt, then you have to be careful with your soldiers, because when they're targeting stuff, he's still going to be among the targeted. So if you're cycling through your targets here, that guy's still paralyzed, and in the interest of not wasting ammo on targets that are no longer a threat, you don't want to waste your time dealing with this guy. He's not doing anything. Mission's going to be over long before he wakes up. So just be mindful of what you're targeting, and don't shoot the guy that's already paralyzed. It's a waste of ammo, and you don't have to do it. If he's paralyzed when all of the other Pandorans are dead or also paralyzed, that's it. The mission's over. You don't have to actually kill him. So that's going to be it for the combat capabilities. It's not designed for combat. It is really, really good for these collection missions where you're trying to capture them alive. It excels at that. It's really good. And so that's what you want to use the Aspida for, or for supporting your troops from a medical standpoint. If you're looking for a combat vehicle that's going to dish out damage and be able to absorb a ton of damage, get yourself a Scarab or an Armadillo. They're better suited to the combat role. But for these hunting parties, this thing is clutch. You're going to love it, and it's going to do a really good job of paralyzing Pandorans for you, and at the same time keep your troopers safe and keep them healed up. All right, guys, that's our in-depth look at the Aspida. If you've enjoyed this video, do me a big favor and tap that like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. That's all for now. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.